Alrighty, everybody. My name is Jake Breedlove,
I'm Dylan Ayala.
and we are back for Wake Surfology, episode 8. Last week we got together and we talked about some different ways wake surfers can make money, and I thought that was a good topic that we were able to dive into and covered a lot that we wanted to, so hopefully that was helpful. And this week we got some other things we want to cover. So what are we looking at, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean the information about how wake surfers make money is cool because obviously it's not really talked about and it's just kind of like an unknown thing. So that was fun to talk about last week and just talk about and tell people about how wake surfers make money. But today we're going to be talking about skim versus surf and kind of a few different topics about skim versus surf. And obviously we're both surf style riders. We have our favorite, but they're both very fun and just very different.
Yeah, Dylan and I, we've both been competing in wake surfing for a long time. And like you said, we both compete and our expertise is in the surf style. But we have ridden skim style a lot, and we know a lot of skim riders and have been in the industry for a while. So we're just going to get into this, and you'll get our take on skim style and our ideas of the tricks and the differences and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. Starting it off, I don't want to be looking at that. We'll start off with like how to choose skim versus surf. Like if you're just getting started, how would you go about choosing which one you want to ride? Because a lot of the times I feel like it's just whatever is on the boat is kind of. Sometimes people just get sucked into it by just that's the first board they ride and that's what they fall in love with. So, how would you go about choosing if you were to?
Well, before I answer that question real quick, yeah, that's how it was for me at least. I would
Mhm.
just, ride whatever board was there when I first got into it, because I wasn't really the one that was trying to get into it. I was
Yeah.
just kind of in the mix of others that were trying to do it. So I just picked up surf style board because that's what was there. But yeah, to answer your question, how do you choose? I think there are a couple things that you can try to do to figure out what you like. I think the first one would probably be, what are your goals? Like, what are you trying to accomplish, or what do you think is really cool that you're wanting to do with either surf or skim?
Yeah. Yeah, because like skim style riding is much different than surf. So, like you said, breaking it down to like what your goals are with wake surfing. If you want to have a super surfy style or ride like you're actually ocean surfing, I feel like surf style is better for you just because it's more similar. The look is more similar. But if you want to do like skate style tricks like shoves and that type of thing, maybe skim is better for you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to what you enjoy watching.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, I enjoy watching surfers in the ocean more so than I do watching like skimboarders in the ocean on the beach, or sometimes I even like watching surfers in the ocean over, watching some wake surfers or watching some skimboarders. I just think that's what I like. So whenever I translate that to my actual riding, that's like what my body is like wanting to do. My body, isn't trying to do big cutbacks on a skimboard because nobody really does that. It's not
Yeah.
like super common. But yeah.
Yeah, it's harder to do, like you're saying, like a cutback on a skimboard because the boards are just much different and the style is much different too. Like a bottom turn is going to be easier on a surf style because you got the fins and you got like it's just a different board. So it's just figuring out like what your goals are with wake surfing and the tricks that you, like you said, you really like to watch and what you want to do in wake surfing.
Yeah, more on how to choose between surf and skim. What you can do is, obviously go out and try both. That's very important because you're not really going to know what you want until you try both. And you may need to do it a handful of times to really know what you prefer or what you have a harder time with, what you are, better at, those types of things. And then, you know, adding to that just what you like to watch. So adding those two things together, what is easier for you? What do you like to watch? And what are you trying to accomplish? All of those things will help you have a better idea of what's for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and like if you're just getting started, I mean, from like the coaching side of things, what I've seen is, I mean, it really depends on the person, but if somebody is just kind of standing on the board and letting the board control them, they're going to have an easier time on skim style just because with the fins on the surf style, it's more volume and like those fins really will like take you out and push you away from the wave or so you have to be pretty hard on the like on the board if you're riding surf. So sometimes people have an easier time starting on skim style. But that doesn't mean that like you can't eventually work into surf style if you want to in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because, the surf style boards, they have the bigger fins and then they're also more buoyant. So there is more that you have to do. You got to work a little bit more to get that board to do what you want it to do. Like for some people, like you said, they don't like to move around as much or that's just not really their nature and that's fine. So if you throw them on a surfboard, they might feel like pretty stiff or something.
Yeah.
Whereas someone like me, I like, or you, like we're moving a lot on the surf style board. So whenever we hop on a skim board, we're like all over the place.
Yeah.
Like we can't keep our bearings straight and we're over rotating everything and slipping out and stuff like that.
Yeah, the funny thing too is like you can kind of tell like if a person is gonna like skim or surf, like even by just looking at them, like
You saying you judge people? No.
Yeah. No, like my fiance Hannah, she started on surf style because that's what I rode, but like she tried skim and she's just way better at it. She's just very light and like moves slower and just I don't know, the surf style was very hard for her to ride because she's not very powerful necessarily. So like hopping on the skim was just a much easier transition, even though she's rode surf style much more in the long run, but she's already better on the skim style, which is interesting.
Yeah, and that makes me think about when I give lessons to some kids. Generally, the smaller kids have an easier time getting up on the skim boards, or like when they're a beginner, they are learning to flip the board
Yeah.
up against their feet to get up. And a lot of times, the surf style boards being a lot more buoyant is harder for them to do that part of the getting up with.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, anytime I'm teaching a kid, like you said, start them on the skim board so that they learn how to flip the board up. But right when they get that down, put them on a surf style so they don't get corrupted. Just kidding.
yeah, we love surf style, but no hate against skim. We enjoy that too.
Yeah. They're just definitely different styles, and you see some skim riders kind of take an ocean style. They add that ocean style or ocean pumping to the skim board, and that's super sick to see too. Like the combination of the two.
Yeah, one trick specific that I like to see in skim is like a big frontside 180.
Yeah.
Because I know it's really difficult, not just on surf, but more so on skim. And whenever I see somebody do it on a skim board, like it kind of exemplifies that surf style, which I always like to see. And then B, yeah, just like I said, knowing that it's that difficult and seeing like a skimmer throw a frontside air 180, I don't know, it just it lights that fire again.
Yeah, it's super sick. I love that trick too.
So we kind of talked about kind of a place to start with looking at surf and skim and trying to figure out what you may want to do. But we're going to break this down a little bit more. We're going to look at some key differences between surf and skim, just so you have like a better understanding of the differences between the two, not just, riding itself, but the feeling, how it looks, how it's viewed, the boards, the wave. Lots of different things. So what is that first topic that we're going to get into with that?
Yeah, so like the first one is obviously the board design because they're not only different styles, they're also very different boards. But like so we both ride surf, but the surf style is like foam and then it's glass and they're much thicker and they have big fins. And then while the skim is just like a very thin, like how thin do you think that is? Half an inch? An inch? Half an inch?
I mean, I should know, like, there were regulations and stuff with
Oh, really?
specific details on like thicknesses of boards,
For
and
competing?
yeah, and I should know those, but I don't remember them off the top of my head. But I want to say like a skim board isn't supposed to be more than an inch thick.
Okay.
It's generally like anywhere between like half an inch to an inch or so.
Mhm.
Um, and when I say regulations, those were just like for competitive reasons. There wasn't like
Yeah.
any skim board can't be thicker than an inch or thinner
Yeah.
than half an inch or whatever. But I think, yeah, generally they're about, half an inch or 3/4 of an inch thick.
Mhm. And there's some that are is there any with like the foam in the middle, or how do they make those ones that are like the carbon fiber? Do you know? Like carbon fiber wrapped, or is it completely carbon? I'm not exactly sure on the materials, but do you know?
I don't. Um, I Yeah, I don't. That's
Yeah.
something that I don't know, and I feel bad that we don't have more info on exactly what the boards are made out of. But they're
Yeah,
just made
it's
more with like different composites, I think,
yeah.
and then wrapped with like fiberglass or um, carbon fiber, and then they are glassed, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I don't necessarily know the exact details or like what the core is made out of.
Yeah, and I don't think that's super important to know necessarily like the materials, but just like at least the biggest difference is obviously the shape, and then also the difference in size. You know, like
Yeah, and
um
weight.
yeah, weight too. Like the skim style is much thinner, like we already talked about. And would you say maybe a little bit wider? Or
Yeah, I'd say a little bit wider.
yeah.
I'd say in general they're like a little shorter and a little wider.
Mhm.
And they also too kind of like even the surf style boards, yes, they do kind of mimic the same shape, but the skim style boards also have their very unique kind of shape and
Yeah.
style. Um, like sometimes they will be chopped on the tail and the nose, but for the most part, it's like the shape of an eyeball.
Yeah.
If you think about it,
Like a
like if you're
oval
looking
kind
at,
of.
yeah, it's like a little oval. Whereas like the surf style boards, um, like they don't necessarily come to a point too often anymore. They're usually chopped off, and not as like oval. Like they're more like rectangular in a way,
Yeah.
kind of like wakeboards.
Yeah. So with the different board designs, obviously it's going to give you a different riding experience, and that's kind of another topic area is the actual experience of riding a skim style board versus a surf style board. What would you say some of those biggest differences are?
So the big difference is one is going to feel, more stiff, more locked in. Maybe that makes it feel more controlled to you, which, I mean, that makes sense for what I'm going to say next. And then for Skim, you can spin and slide and, it's a lot more squirrely. So I guess just like the maneuverability is probably like a big aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that you can't maneuver quickly and well on a surf style board, but like again, if you throw someone that's mainly skim onto a surf style board or mainly surf on a skim style board, it's gonna give them a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny too cuz like if we were to hop on a skim style board, it would look like we're out of control, but it would be the opposite if a skim style hopped on a surf style. They would also look like they're out of control too. It's
Yeah.
just funny how like it's just the way that you control the board on each style is pretty different, you
Hmm.
know? Like the surf you're really relying on those fins and you can get hard on that toe side edge where like with the skim it's more evenly weighted and you're kind of using that toe side rail for your like traction and for your stability.
Yeah, that I would say that's the other key difference is the fins, and how you generate speed and pump. It's very different because the fins on a surf style board are gonna give you a lot of traction, and like even the littlest bit of movement is gonna give you a lot of speed moving forward. Whereas on the skim board, like you really kind of have to understand the board itself
Mhm.
to know how to generate your speed, but also have controlled speed.
Yeah.
And without fins on the skim style board, it's harder to do that, or with like one smaller fin. And so you kind of have to utilize the rails of the board, like you said, and and the tail of the board. At least from like when I ride, I generally am heavy on the back foot, and I kind of like ride on the tail of the board, if that makes sense. And I don't know if other skimmers understand that at all, but that's just kind of how I would do it, just to keep my control.
Yeah. Yeah, it's harder for me for sure to hop on a skimboard and stay in control. I think we're just so used to being able to be super hard on that toe side edge, like I was saying. But like with surf style, you could have your chest way over your toes and still be fine and still not be sliding out. Um, and you could stay in that position for a good amount of time. But on skim style, you don't have very long to be over that toe side edge before it slides out from underneath of you.
And I think that's why like skimboards are generally a little bit wider
Yeah.
too, because I feel like a lot of riders, like, you have to adjust your feet more so to a certain rail on the board to get that edge that you might need to save yourself or get speed or do a trick.
Yeah, with like being able to do different tricks on the two different boards, it all builds on what we were talking about before with like board design and like the design of the board. So with a skim style board, it's easier to do like shove type tricks because it's thinner, you know. With like a surf style, you have the fins, so it's easier to do like a big air because you can really get hard on the board without sliding out, so you can get more speed and you can load that front foot harder. You can get over the toes and just create a lot more drive. So that's like the first thing that comes to my mind is on surf style being able to do bigger airs, and then with skim I think of like more spins and shoves.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I like what you mentioned on like being able to have more drive on a surfboard. Um, it's not that you can't gain a lot of speed or have that speed for certain tricks. Dylan and I just don't have that expertise on a skim style board. But yeah, with a surf style board and the bigger fins in general, you still will have the ability to gain more speed and have that drive because of the fins. And I know that like with my fin setup, I ride the quad setup, some two big futures fins, and then two little trailer fins. Sometimes I'll take those out and just kind of see what that feels like. And the first few times I started doing that, when I rode quad for a long time, I would go into pump aggressively, just as aggressively as I would for a big air or a 180 or whatever. And I remember I would immediately slip out where
Really?
I would be coming down the face of the wave and then getting ready to pump again and kind of stand up and follow through.
Yeah.
But the board would slide, out to the flats, and I would just like belly flop basically on the wave. And so, yeah, those fins can make a big difference. And if I were to do that on a skim board, it would probably look really, really funny.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, like you have to pump them differently, like you said, and like especially on skim. That's with just taking out those two little fins behind, you know.
mhm.
So like if you have no fins at all, and that's how most of the pros ride it is finless. So you're really relying on that toe side edge and just like creating your own speed. They still do like aerial tricks, some of them, but they're really good at doing like a 5 big or a 7 big or
Yeah.
really flicking the board. And the skimboard is easier to do that as well because it's so thin. You know, it's not so much volume. It just flicks easier. But yeah, you got anything else to add about like the actual tricks?
Yeah, I think when it comes to skim, or scratch that, I feel like those front side tricks, the board likes to shove real easy. The fins don't have as hard of a time like pushing through the wave. And then with like skim style tricks, or not skim style tricks, but on a skim board, especially if you're finless and you're trying to boost off the wave or do a trick off the lip, I feel like that wave is wanting to like push the tail end of the board, which is what's going to touch the wave for the longest until you break loose from the water. And so I feel like that wave is like pushing the tail end out, and I feel
Yeah.
like that makes it easier for like backside rotations, like
Okay.
back shoves, and stuff like that. Whereas like a front side air 180 on a skimboard is like one of the more difficult tricks to do. Like it's harder to do that than it is to do like a regular shove or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the biggest thing about that is, like you were saying, not having those fins to really load into that. Like when you go to do a
Hmm.
front side 180 on a skim style board, you don't have that traction or like that stability as much as you do on the surf style.
Hmm.
And like when you go to flick it, like you're saying, I mean, it's so much easier to flick because you don't have the fins. And then, like you're saying too, that it wants to naturally flick or like rotate as soon as it comes through. So, like, you could use that or say that's a positive or a negative.
Hmm.
But, like, how you were saying um, that, like, front side tricks are easier for you, while for most people, backside tricks are easier. That just goes to show that like you're better at what you're better at, and that can be the same. That could be said the same about like skim versus surf. You know, some people are just better at skim, and some people are better at surf, and it's really just kind of like what you want to ride. Not everybody's gonna be better at front side rotations like you are, and not everybody's gonna be better at skim like some people are.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it just made me think about how like maybe I'm not so weird with the way I learn the tricks.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I am, but it like everyone is going to have a very unique and different, experience when they're learning to do tricks wake surfing, and then also other things that you just do in your daily life, where you create, different habits with like muscle memory and stuff like that, or if you do other sports or athletic stuff. Like wherever you have learned athletic abilities or movements and stuff like that, when you go to wake surf, like you're gonna have a lot of tendencies or things that you just naturally do because that's what you've learned or that's what your body is used to doing. So that I mean that can hinder you sometimes. Like one little tip I try to tell people is don't let your shoulders point directly at the boat. Like
Mm-hmm.
point your shoulders toward the wave. That's gonna help you do tricks better and have more control. Um, but yeah, just in general, things will be uh,
Different.
different.
For other people.
Yeah.
But like we've talked about it in other episodes, but you've had a history in wakeboarding. Like that's what you got started in, and we talked about how with wakeboarding you're kind of opened up more, and like I feel like that probably is just it makes you comfortable with riding opened up, and maybe even with that front side rotation too.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's probably why front side rotations are easier for me
Mm-hmm.
because I learned to wakeboard first, and I didn't necessarily hit the wake toe side much. It was always heel side. So when you're cutting in heel side, you're kind of opening your chest to the boat, and when you
Yeah.
have both hands on the rope when you're wakeboarding, it's pulling that back arm, which opens your chest to the boat.
Yeah.
And then also too, since I was regular and I would jump the wake on my heel side, I was too afraid to try like a backside 360, which would be blind,
Yeah.
um, compared to like a front side 360, where you kind of like start to see half of your rotation, which makes it a little easier. And so I would always do front side rotations, and I would
Yeah.
never do a backside rotation.
Yeah, and that just goes back to like how you're saying like habits of building habits in the real world. Like that's something that you were doing before. So you just had way more reps doing front side rotations on a wakeboard.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, same could be said for people riding a skateboard. You know, like if they're better at doing shoves on a skateboard, then I mean, we were talking about it earlier, but like half pipe type of tricks, like skim style might be easier for them, and like doing flat ground tricks, if they're really good at that, then getting on a skimboard might be an easier transition.
Yeah, yeah, and what Dylan was was kind of saying there is, like I said earlier to him, I was thinking that skim style is more so like street skating,
Mm-hmm.
and surf style is more like riding vert,
Or bowls.
which
Yeah.
is like half pipes and the bowls and stuff. It's just a different style of riding.
Yeah. Yeah, where it's like this, it's like the same thing, but just different versions. And that's kind of how skim and surf are. Like some of it transfers over, but it's just kind of like the fundamentals of each are just different. So another key difference too between skim and surf is the actual stability aspect of both. Obviously, surf style is going to be a little bit more stable, but that's just because we've done it more. What do you think about the difference of the two and the stability?
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit in the riding experience, but I'd say, a surf style board being more buoyant usually sits more on top of the water. And so that can, make it more stable in some ways, but again, depending on the person, like their height and weight and like uh, how good of balance they have, like that could make it more difficult. Because I know, like, I'm very sensitive with my riding and stuff. So in one podcast, we talked about like the traction, whether we used wax or traction.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I would used to ride the traction, it would feel like, I don't know, like I was raised up on the board too much.
Yeah.
And it was like too buoyant. And I didn't have like good control with my toes and my feet on the board. So yeah, I mean, it for some it might feel weird, and others it might feel more comfortable, feeling more stable. Um, Skimming though, the board sits like a lot more in the water. Usually, well, dude, I don't even know.
I'll add something to what you were just saying. Like with that stability too, on the surf style, it's gonna be super stable, but you're gonna have to do more to get it to move. So sometimes that can hinder people from being able to ride the surf style. Like they have to push so hard into that toe side rail that they're not able to because of how stable it is. So sometimes it can make it less stable.
I think when it comes to stability, the key difference is probably going to be, with the fins, at least for me, because whenever I'm riding on my surf style board, I feel very comfortable in my movements. Like I feel like when I get on a skim board, I might be like overcompensating on like my weight displacement or like how much I move my arm for a trick or something, or even just like when I'm pumping, because it's just like not the same feeling under my feet, and so my body and my muscle memory doesn't match like the board that is gonna connect with those movements. So when I get on the skim board and I try to pump or something, it feels weird and the board is different and I slide or whatever, and then I'm flailing with my arms more or something. So like without that fin in the skim board, like if you don't have a fin, like you're gonna be moving around a lot more, and sometimes even with that fin, you'll still slide around a ton just because you don't have 3 fins or 4 fins in your board. So the next key difference that we wanted to touch on was the wave that a skim rider might want versus a surf style rider. And for me, as a surf style rider, I do like a steep wave. I don't like it, super long because sometimes that can take away from the steepness of it. I don't necessarily need it to be super mellow, but a lot of riding room is still really nice to have. Like it's kind of nice to be able to get away from the wave a little bit and still have push kind of in the flats.
Yeah.
But in general, a steep, medium length wave is fine. I don't want it super short and soft and not super long and too firm. Just right in the middle, which is probably speed 11 too.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What about the skimmers? What are they going to prefer more?
Yeah. So I prefer surf style, like a medium wave. I like it just a little bit less steep than you do. But yeah, typically, like you're saying, surf style likes a lippier wave. Just like it's more of like a ramp. I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but skim style typically will ride a less steep wave from what I've seen. Obviously, we don't do it a whole lot, but yeah, usually like the surf style riders will be riding a much steeper wave, and then skim is just a little bit less steep. Some of them ride a steep wave, but typically skim style is kind of a less steep wave.
Yeah, I'd say they prefer somewhat of a flat wave, most of them. And maybe this has to do with like the board shape. I feel like maybe some skim boards, tend to nosedive a little easier.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's just like what I've seen. But
You're like all these skimboarders nosedive all the time.
I mean, I know I remember a couple of times I was on like a super steep wave with a skimboard, and
yeah.
when you get to the bottom of like a super steep wave on a skimboard, sometimes I don't know.
It's just harder to get through.
Maybe I suck at skimming, but I just nosedive all the time. Dude.
That's funny.
Whatever. But what was I even saying?
Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
You were saying that skim riders like a less steep wave. They nosedive.
Oh yeah, so they tend to like a flatter wave, and I feel like this kind of allows them, like it doesn't take away from their pop. They're still able to pop on it, because it's not like there's no lip to it. It's just a more gradual transition to the bottom of the wave. And I think this just allows them to easily do combos, link their tricks and stuff. And it just helps with that landing. And maybe one reason why I feel like they nosedive more, or maybe one reason why they do nosedive more often.
You're like, wait, now that I think about it, they definitely do.
Well, now that I think about it even more, I don't think they do.
No, say it, dude. You're good. It doesn't matter.
No.
Don't think about it too much.
No, I thought more about it. I was thinking originally, maybe the skim boards are generally like a little flatter and like don't have as much rocker, and so like they come down and then bam, they get taken out. But
I definitely think
I don't know.
True.
Maybe I'm thinking of 10% of skimming. Maybe I'm thinking of
no. I mean, you look at a skim board. I mean, most of them are pretty flat. They got a little bit of nose rocker, but like on your surf style board, your board has a lot of rocker.
I do have a lot of rocker.
Yeah, I have a good amount of rocker, but not as much as you. But mine is definitely not flat. But like you look at Keenan's board, who rides surf and skim, his surf style is very flat. He has like hardly any rocker on his.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like I guess that goes back to the different board designs, and you can take aspects of each and kind of put them into each other.
Yeah.
But like if you think about the different waves and waves that each style likes, like surf style really likes a lippy wave, and like learning on a Nautique, that's what I learned on. That wave is super lippy, super tight, and just super lippy. Like you'll see a lot of skim style riders not necessarily like Nautique, just because it's pretty lippy and it's hard, I think, for them to, I don't know, it's just very lippy. And I've seen skim style riders kind of struggle on Nautique and get frustrated with it.
Well, and we keep talking about, skim style riders not liking a steep wave. And, that's not entirely true. Like there are definitely some that prefer a steep wave and can really do some damage on a steep wave, which is awesome. So any skimmers listening, please educate me and Dylan, because we want to educate others.
Well, I mean, we're around wake surfers every day, and we see skim and surf, and it's just like, this is the majority of people is like if you're a skimmer, you typically, from what I've seen, like a smaller wave, and that's just like how it is. I mean, there's obviously going to be outliers on each that like maybe a less steep wave or a more steep wave, but yeah, from like the majority of like skim riders like a less steep wave from what I've seen.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I was thinking about it more too. I was like comparing wake surfing to skateboarding and how it's kind of like skim is street skating and surf style is like vert riding or bull riding with big ramps and stuff. It makes sense when you look at the wave comparison. Mm-hmm. My wave on the surf style, it is a ramp. There's a ramp out there right behind the boat. And then like the skimmers, the, general skimmers that like a flatter wave. It's more so just like a sloped incline, like just a gradual sloped incline, like they're just skateboarding down the street,
Yeah.
throwing their tricks like on the sidewalk.
Right.
I don't know, and
Yeah.
like comboing and like doing lots of stuff.
Yeah, skimmers will definitely do a lot more combos. They carry their speed really well and just different riding style. And I think you just got to kind of choose what you like and what you prefer. It was kind of funny the other day I was doing a lesson and the guy, he really loves skim style, and he was like, but I should have done surf style, but like skim style is more fun, right? And I was like, well, if I thought that skim style was more fun, I'd be riding skim and you would be riding surf. So it's like, it's whatever you like. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. Whatever you're having the most fun on and what you enjoy is the style that you should ride.
Yeah, it's very important to just stick with what you like, and you shouldn't be doing things just because other people like to do other things. And I say that like you shouldn't do those things at all, but like you should try everything and just, figure out what you do like and what you're good at, and, does it matter to you to be super good at something to enjoy it, or do you like something just because of, that feeling? Like you may just love to ride skim style just because of how it feels, and you may not, be good at, progressing the tricks, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And or vice versa with surf style.
Yeah, and some people are really good at both. I mean, some people can ride both and like literally do like on some of the organizations will do it is getting long. Like you could ride skim and surf, and some people will do one run on the way and then do the other board on the way back.
Yeah.
And being able to just like hop on one to the other is really insane. But yeah, I mean, it's really what you like, what you prefer, and we gave you a lot of information today, and you guys can kind of choose what you like.
Yeah, hopefully some of those key differences helps you break down, the differences between the two. It gives you a better understanding of what's up with surf and what's up with skim if you haven't, learned enough about them. But
yeah, it's honestly preference, and I mean, I love surf, you love surf, and sometimes occasionally we'll hop on a skimboard, but typically we're riding surf.
yes, sir.
So we might be a little biased today.
We're very biased. We love surf, y'all. This is wake surfology.
Yeah, not wake skimology. Dude, what if somebody wake skimology? All right, Jake. Well, you're heading to North Carolina tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not competing in skim, just to clarify.
Yeah, but you're going for the comp. Good luck. I'm going to Lake Powell this week, or I'd be going to. I really wanted to go that one, but go win it and have a good time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So, yeah, you said you're going to be in Lake Powell. Are you going to wake surf, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah, every day.
Every day?
Dude, Lake Powell's the best, dude. It's the biggest lake, or not obviously the biggest, but, like, it's a big lake, and there's so much water and so many places to surf, and it's just, like, it's literally like you're wake surfing on Mars. But Hannah's family has a houseboat, and they've been going since, like, the 80s, I think. I think they've gone, like, 40-something years in a row. And, yeah, so they have a houseboat there. You go out, you find a spot, you sleep on the houseboat, you wake up, you look out, see the water's good, you go surf, and then come back in and just chill on the houseboat. You can go spearfishing, have a fire. It's so fun.
You spearfish out there?
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
Holy
you
cow.
see some, like, big carps, and there's bass, but I don't think the bass are in season. But, yeah, spearfishing, you see, like, bluegills, catfish. It's so fun.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Good luck at the comp, and episode 8. That was a good one.
Y'all, yeah, this is episode 8, Wake Surfology.
Yep.
I guess we're closing out now. Let's
All right,
go.
peace.
See y'all next week.